There must be something seriously wrong with me because I just spent the entire day analyzing an 11-game football slate for the preseason. Hey, Dave Loughren here. If you haven't done so yet, give me a follow at Loughy_D on Twitter. We'll talk football all season long. Handle is right there is where you can find it. And of course, if you think somewhere along the way you found this video that I do all through the preseason every year and into the regular season, postseason, you name it, helpful, valuable, entertaining, whatever it may be, even if it's just a time killer, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel as well. Goes a long way. Appreciate you guys for that. And we all love football. So, of course, leave a comment down below what your favorite plays are. Coming up for week 2, we have an 11-game slate. It's an absolute monster. So we'll dig into it. I'll spend more time on the games that I think justify it and less on the ones that we're not betting anyway. So let's make it happen. All right, let's kick it off with the Browns in Philly against the Eagles. Eagles 4.5-point favorites here. Now, I posted this one over on Tails. You guys know where to find me. On Monday or Tuesday at Eagles -1. It's now -4.5. And of course, first link in the description. If you guys want to follow me over there, my picks will be free every game, every day of the week, all the way through the Super Bowl. No charge, nothing like that. So come hang, click on that link, then just click follow. And if you don't have an account yet, it takes 2 seconds. Like you can do it through Google, through Apple, whatever it may be. You don't even have to create actual credentials. Just sign up, follow me there. For all of the picks free throughout the season. And of course, turn on notifications so you always know when they drop. The best thing about that is I post them all there before this video ever comes out, sometimes days before I ever post a thread on Twitter, and plays that never make it to YouTube or Twitter, you can find there. So follow me, hit me up. Let's sweat some football together and talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this doesn't mean it's a lock to win just because we got it at -1. For those of you who follow me, you would know. Now it's -4.5. But getting to some of these games early in the preseason can be huge. You can really grab closing line value in a big way. Same with the regular season, but in the preseason, it can be even more dramatic. Now, the quarterback situation is a mess in Cleveland right now. Joe Flacco is not going to play, according to Kevin Stefanski, but Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, all of them are dealing with injuries in some capacity. And obviously, Deshaun Watson's not playing. It's looking more and more like this is going to be a Dylan Gabriel and Tyler Huntley game. Sanders didn't participate in the second wave of the practice or the next day after hurting his oblique. That isn't to say I have any faith in Dorian Thompson-Robinson in Philly, nor do I have faith in Kyle McCord, assuming he gets into this game. But Tanner McKee is proving quickly that he is the real deal. Looked fantastic against both the Bengals 1s and 2s last week, played into the third quarter. And given Nick Sirianni's history in the preseason, I would expect McKee to get most of the first half, if not all of it, in this game while the starters sit, especially since we saw joint practices in this game as well, or in this week for these teams. I bet the Eagles -1 earlier in the week, but I don't want to lay 4.5 now that it's moved so much. I honestly think the play here would just be to take Eagles -1.5 in the first half. And on Bet365, you can get that at -115. That is the best line. I checked them on all of the books. Give me Eagles if you didn't bet it at -1 already. Take the first half, -1.5 points, and let's hope Tanner McKee gets the entirety of this one. If so, we could be in good shape. Patriots at the Vikings. Vikings laying 1.5 at home. I'll tell you what, Mike Vrabel, Patriots head coach, not very pleased with how his team, particularly the offensive line, performed in joint practices this week. He had a lot to say. He plans on getting the starters back on the field Saturday as they were last week as well against Washington. For how long, I don't know, but I'd expect them to play in probably a series or two, maybe 2. For Minnesota, though, Kevin O'Connell already said his starters aren't going to play. He ruled out J.J. McCarthy and other notable players. So, I'll let you in on a little secret about the preseason. Sometimes it's just about getting the right number and less about knowing everything about everyone and every situational, positional battle, you name it. And in the case of this game, the Patriots are +120 moneyline dogs on DraftKings. My question is why? Assuming Drake May plays a couple of series here, Josh Dobbs replaces him, and then you get Ben Woldridge, who's going to come in. Nothing special about those guys. But Sam Howell's starting for Minnesota on the other side, and he's been, from every report I've seen, despite a decent start or game last time out in the preseason, but from everything I've seen, he's been an unmitigated disaster at camp. Someone described him as unraveling and falling to pieces. I mean, that's not great. Then you have Brett Rippon and Max Brosmer. So yeah, I'm just going to bet the number here. And this number is way better. You got to shop the odds, guys. I can't tell you more. That even if, you go on to have a decent preseason or even a decent regular season altogether, if you're shopping the odds and getting the best number, you're saving yourself a ton of money over the long haul. And as that sample expands, you're going to find how much you're actually losing by only betting on one book. So in this case, we're showing a positive edge over on the Odds Shopper live odds tool, plus 120 on DraftKings. That's where I'll take it. By the way, that live odds tool is free. But give me Patriots money line plus 120. We'll just bet the number here. Dolphins minus 1.5 at the Lions. Here's another matchup where joint practices took place this week. But, both Mike McDaniel and Dan Campbell look like they're sitting their starters. The Lions obliterated the Dolphins in joint practices by all accounts, both the ones and the twos. And while that's not necessarily a great indicator of what's going to happen in the preseason game, I wouldn't say it's completely irrelevant either. But, this is also the Lions' third preseason game. They played in the Hall of Fame game. I just genuinely don't have a good read or good angle, and I don't think there's anything that we can target heavily here. If you see something and you know something I don't, which is possible, I'm talking 11 games that I had to dissect, always possible you miss something where you've got all this like buried information for preseason games, let me know in the comments. But it might just possibly be another spot where you bet the number. The Lions are plus 110 on FanDuel on the money line right now. I'm not betting this game, but that's what I would do. I would FanDuel plus 110 on the money line, but not a game I'm betting. Panthers at the Texans. Texans minus 2.5 at home. And another joint practice. Apparently it was a good one. Physical. Both coaches seemed relatively pleased with it, both D'Amico Ryans and Dave Canales. But Canales mentioned before the preseason even began that he was going to play his starters in each of the first two games. Now, it makes sense. They got off to a brutally bad start in the regular season. Is his first year as the head coach in Carolina. So I think we should expect to see Bryce Young and company again this weekend. The Panthers are only carrying 3 quarterbacks too, which means, Young gets a couple of drives and then Andy Dalton gets a good amount of work, maybe closes out the first half before Jack Plummer gets cleanup duty in the second. I mean, then I think probably Plummer gets the bulk of week 3 as well. But D'Amico Ryans hasn't announced his starters, his quarterback at the time of me recording this video, Friday afternoon. As a matter of fact, I found nothing of note on what he said about who will play this week. But judging from his past, granted, no joint practices last year in week 2, I'd expect the starters to get some work. Last year, Stroud saw limited action in week 1 and then a couple of drives in week 2. Again, they played the Hall of Fame game last year and they didn't have joint practices. So this may be, a little bit misleading. But at the same time, like, what else are we supposed to go on, right? So with that in mind, I'd lean Houston minus 2.5 here. But we have 11 games, right? And you can't be betting all of them, especially when we don't have even all the information we need. So lean Houston minus 2. Let's get to another game that I do like, and you guys are going to dislike me for liking this game. Colts are 6-point favorites at home against the Packers. I understand how ugly that game was last time for the Colts. You can say whatever you want too, right? I mean, I bet all these games myself. Well, the ones that I throw on tail, those are the ones I'm betting, and I tell you on this video too. But feel free to call me a sucker here. Feel free to fade it. Hey, these bets are free anyway, so what does it matter, right? Granted, I'm putting in as much research as I can. I'm not just throwing you garbage, but what are you going to do? It's free. I'll gladly refund you your misery, which is free. Anyway, I want to go back to the Colts on the first half spread. I can get them at minus 3.5 on Bet365 at only minus 105. Mind you, they are minus 128 on FanDuel, minus 115 on Caesars. All right. So this number is already the best we get by a mile. And if you're not on Bet365 yet, I can't stress it enough. This has been the best the best preseason odds I'm finding are clearly on Bet365. So far this preseason, the best book for me for the preseason betting has been Bet365. Through a link in the description, you bet 5, get $200 in bonus bets. 150 in some states, but guess what? That's still 150 or 200 in bonus bets you didn't have before. Someone walks up to you on the street, says, here, listen, you're going to give me $5 and I'm going to give you 200. You're not going to spit in his face and walk away. You're going to make that deal and run away before he changes his mind. So anyway, link down there. You deposit 10, bet 5, get 200 in bonus bets, whether or not your bet wins or loses. It's a beautiful thing. But I think these are the best odds you're going to find here. And, you know, every quarterback last week for the Packers was bad. Matt LaFleur already said that Jordan Love isn't going to play. He's dealing with an injury. The starters aren't going to play either. And yeah, these teams had joint practices this week, except the Colts are the only team with a quarterback, an active quarterback competition. And I personally think, look, I haven't spoken to the man personally. I think Steichen wants Anthony Richardson to come out there and prove that the job is his this week. Remember, he had the finger injury early last week when he was supposed to play most of that first half, but then Daniel Jones had to come in relief. So now they're flipping the script and doing the opposite of what they were intended to do. But, you know, the difference this week, and I think it's a huge difference, you guys can tell me if you disagree down below, is that Richardson and Jones played with mostly backups. Yes, Tyler Warren played 20 snaps, but this week, Steichen expects the starters to play about a quarter, in his words. That includes guys like Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. Josh Downs got hurt in joint practice. I don't think he plays. But even guys like Tyler Warren, this guy's going to be awesome in this league. Expect him to play. A.D. Mitchell's going to play probably a decent amount with the backups. He's having an absolutely electric camp. So they've got more weapons at their disposal. So yeah, I understand how ugly it was last week, but I'm going to bet the spots that I think are good spots regardless of a one-game sample the previous week. Not to mention that was John Harbaugh's Ravens, and they have a somewhat of a history in the preseason, even though I was wrong about them last week. Obviously, that, kick return on the opening play didn't set us up for success. And that's the thing about preseason games is sometimes special teams can just completely flatten your bet. Or if you're the optimist, sometimes things can go your way, and in the preseason, those special teams blunders can work in your favor. Look, it is the way it is. We're not looking to win 90% of our bets here. We're looking to come out of the preseason with a little bit of profit. That's the way it is. It's a 3-week sample. But I'm going to do it. Yeah, signs point towards this being the play. Colts minus 3.5 in the first half, minus 105 on Bet365. Let's see if they can get us back on track. 49ers at the Raiders. Raiders laying 4.5 here. All right, so Pete Carroll said he's going to play his starters quite a bit this week. But what no one's talking about, and like you see betting analysts all the time, they'll mention like one little bit of a quote and then remove the rest of it. I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy out there, far from it, right? But I want to always know what they're saying within the context of everything else. And the second part of this quote was Pete Carroll saying, "We're real basic," Carroll said. "We ran the most fundamental plays that you can run. Our format of going through the preseason is going to continue to be just basic to keep our edge for the opener and the first 3 or 4 games. Teams don't know who we are, and so they're going to have to find out as we go." So yeah, to me, that's not nothing. The problem also, Brock Purdy and the starters are going to play for the Niners this week. Now, I doubt we see Kittle or McCaffrey, Trent Williams, but guys like Ricky Pearsall in the starting defense should be out there. Pearsall's sick, by the way. The problem with the 49ers is they're so banged up and down the roster. But again, these teams held joint practices this week, and Pete Carroll's no dummy. He's not going to play them for the whole game. 4.5 points just kind of feels like a lot. I'm also a fan of Mac Jones as well. You guys know that. He was good to us in the preseason last year. He had a nice little drive, nice start last week as well. I'd expect him to get a lot of work in this one, and then Carter Bradley in the second half. It's not a favorite game of mine, but I think I'll sprinkle on the Niners plus 2.5 first half spread, assuming we're looking at a vanilla Raiders offense, so not really showing anything among their starters, followed by Aiden O'Connell, and then Brock Purdy, albeit missing some starters, the 49ers starting defense for at least one drive against the Raiders starters, and then Mac Jones to finish the half. So sprinkle on it. Half unit play makes sense to me. 49ers plus 2.5 in the first half. By the way, minus 110 on Bet365. Ravens at the Cowboys. Ravens are -1.5 here. If the Ravens run game looks anything like it did on Saturday against the Colts, I don't know how the Cowboys are going to stop them. I really don't. Keaton Mitchell was excellent. Even Rasheen Ali looked good at times. And Cooper Rush should start this one. And no, it's no Lamar Jackson, clearly. This is a guy who started plenty of games in Dak Prescott's absence. Yes, be facing his former team today. And even though John Harbaugh's win streak was snapped back in week 2 of 2023, this team looked pretty good last week, didn't they? I guess it doesn't mean all that much, but the depth here, I think that helps a lot. Brian Schottenheimer already said he's starting Joe Milton. So it'll be really just him and Will Grier. But the difference between these two teams, I think, is the rest of their rosters and not just the quarterback situation. Now that the odds no longer reflect a John Harbaugh who refuses to lose in the preseason, and we've seen this come back down to earth, maybe it is time for us to jump back on the bandwagon. I was wrong last week. I'm willing to admit it. Not that there isn't evidence regardless. Give me the Ravens -1.5 here on the road. Buccaneers laying 2.5 on the road against the Steelers. Last week we went with the Bucs. We got him +150 on that first half money line. We'll take that all day long. That was a sweat-free one as well. I think we go back to the well here, except we do it a little bit differently. We take the first half spread at half -0.5 point, -110 on Bet365. Again, I'm finding Bet365 to have by far the most reasonable and exploitable preseason odds, for sure. I mean, FanDuel's -1.5 here, guys. It's a pretty big difference, you know? Here's how this game breaks down. Mike Tomlin already ruled out a laundry list of starters, including Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, TJ Watt, and pretty much everybody of note. Like any other key player you could think of on the offensive or defensive side of the roster. Todd Bowles, meanwhile, ruled out Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Levante David, but all of the other starters are going to play on both sides of the ball, as he noted. Now, I really like, as I mentioned last week, what we've seen from Kyle Trask. He was pretty good last week. Dude led a 18-play, 11-minute drive for a touchdown. Ate up basically the whole first quarter, to the point where Cam Ward had to play midway through the second quarter because he was on the sidelines for so long. I like what we've seen from him. But Mason Rudolph for the Steelers isn't the worst player for them either. So Skylar Howard also. I wrote him down as Skylar Howard. I knew that didn't sound right. Skylar Thompson was good last week. And Will Howard, rookie Will Howard, isn't expected to play again. Oh, and Teddy Bridgewater is expected to play for the Bucs. So really the big difference here is less about the quarterbacks, because Mason Rudolph's not bad. He has a lot of experience. It's more about Tampa's ones getting at least a couple series, let's say 2 series, against Pittsburgh's 2s on both sides of the ball. So let's roll with the Bucs -0.5 point in the first half here on the road. That is our bet, -110 on Bet365. Jets at the Giants. Giants laying 3.5. Ooh, how about that? I'll keep it short because neither Brian Daboll or Aaron Glenn have hinted at their plans for Saturday night. Daboll's notorious for this. It appears Glenn is following suit. Here's what I can say, though. The Giants' quarterback room, not in the regular season, but in the preseason, is just better than the Jets. Really better than most teams. Tyrod Taylor is going to miss the preseason with an injury for the Jets. So they worked out Nathan Peterman and C.J. Beathard. That's fun. They haven't signed either of them yet at the time of me recording. But for the Giants, behind Russell Wilson, who might even play this week, you have Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, who acquitted himself well in his first taste of action, and Tommy DeVito, who at the very least has some experience in the NFL as a starter. So given that these teams also held joint practices this week and both teams ran their starters for a drive last week, I could see them both following a similar pattern in week 2. And if that's the case, I'll just bet on the Giants' backups being better than Adrian Martinez. Hey, he was okay last week, but come on. And Brady Cook. You know, be careful with this one, please, because depending on what these coaches say, one of them may do something different than the other, you know, in the coming 24 hours. This line could move quite a bit. But for now, give me Giants -3.5. Chargers -6.5 points at the Rams this week. Ooh, 6.5-point preseason favorites is a lot. Look, I'll have you know that 26 of 32 teams held joint practices this week. Way more than last year, and these two teams were included in that 26. There's a part of me that wants to just stay far away from this game, though, because Justin Herbert is playing in his first ever preseason game. But does that, and I know Sean McVay's preseason history isn't exactly great, but does that mean we should be looking at laying 6.5 points? Now, he actually approached Jim Harbaugh and asked if he could play because he wanted to feel the pass rush. He wanted to feel the game before the season begins. But when asked about how long they play, Harbaugh said 1 series, maybe 2. Sounds like 1 to me. Yet they're 6.5-point favorites. I mean, it's a boatload of points. Just knowing Harbaugh and the likelihood that he gives them only 1 drive in this game. On the other hand, I'm still not a believer in Stetson Bennett. He was much better last week, played the whole game, than he was at any point in last preseason or the one prior to that. Still, Harbaugh's Chargers, I guess we'll give them this. They've blown out each of their first 2 opponents in the preseason. I just don't like either side here. It's a lot of points. Would I lean Chargers minus 6.5? Sure, but I'm not touching this game. The Cardinals are on the road in Denver against the Broncos. Broncos 3-point favorites. The Saturday Encore takes place in Denver, where both Jonathan Gannon and Sean Payton mutually agreed not to play their starters this week after physical joint practices. Aren't we getting tired of hearing that? Not as many next week, so you won't have to hear me ramble on about that, but it is important if we're going to be betting these games. So we can enjoy Jacoby Brissett and Clayton Tune against Jared Stidham and Sam Ehlinger. I'm of the opinion that Denver just has more depth here. I don't need a ton of analysis in this game. I'm going to have a small play on Denver. I'd love to say the Cardinals haven't acclimated to the altitude, but that's just not true. They've been there this week for the practices. No, it's really just a matter of depth, and the Cardinals are a very banged-up team right now. So give me the Broncos minus 3, wrapping up this Saturday 11-game slate. And, of course, you can find my Sunday, there's 2 games, and a Monday game picks over on Tails for free. Link is in the description. Takes 2 seconds to sign up. Click follow, turn on notifications, and we'll sweat some games past Saturday. Appreciate you guys hanging out as always, and we'll see you back here for the next one, week 3 of the preseason, before we actually start talking real football in week 1. Bye-bye.